Over the past couple of months, we've had a mountain of new content for Cities Skylines 2. We've had a new DLC, huge base game updates, content creator packs, and finally, official asset support. And I don't know about you, but all these new toys have me looking back at my old builds, wishing that I'd had them from the start. Now, we could just leave those areas as is. We could even invent a whole bunch of lore to explain the changes that we want to make. But sometimes, it just makes way more sense to give yourself a bit of grace and call a mulligan. And that's going to be the spirit of the next few episodes. We're going to go back to spots where a lack of assets, or let's be real, my own skill level at the time, meant that I couldn't fully execute my vision for the build. And we're going to fix them. Today we're starting here, Riverbend Boulevard. It's an awkward stretch that's a total product of its time. It's full of UK assets, and while some fit, others just don't. Now, my original goal for this area was to have a classic suburban feel for the neighborhood. So let's call a mulligan so we can finally make the area look and feel the way it was meant to. And if you're excited to call a few mulligans, hit the like button and let me know what areas you'd like to see me tackle next. And without further ado, let's jump right in. The first thing we're going to do is make some changes to the transportation network, and that's because that's one of the biggest mistakes in this area. There's way too much connectivity for a suburban area, which might sound crazy for me to say, but this is a very urban layout. There's lots of connectivity, and the rules of roadway hierarchy are not really being respected, and that's a hallmark of a suburban area. Now, this is going to also aid in getting rid of some of the uses that I just think are inappropriate. These buildings right here are incredibly tall, and that was never the goal here. I never wanted to have a mini downtown. It just so happened to become that because once they reached level 5, they got this large. So let's call a mulligan on all of these buildings. I'm going to remove basically everything along Riverbend Boulevard, and then we're going to make some really significant changes to the road. Now, that was just the beginning. The next thing I want to do is take this entire road and convert it to be a highway. And that might sound absolutely insane, but I assure you that it's not. There's going to be a method to this madness. We're going to take this and take this 2-lane, one-way highway and convert the entire thing. Now, as we approach this interchange, here's where things get really interesting. So first of all, this gas station is going to be removed. This was never a great location for this. And then instead of having this gas station here, we're going to transition into a 4-lane attached road. And then I'll need to manipulate this node to make this look a little bit more natural. Now I want an extra turn lane onto the highway. So I'll give that right here. And I'll give another lane coming from downtown Bend as well. Now we've got all this extra capacity down here, way more than we need, which I think is kind of what you might expect to see in a suburban environment, but we have to transition into the urban environment. And for that, I think I want to grab the 4-lane road that we have over here on Short Street, and we're going to bring that through, right through this area. And then I want this to be the through movement, so I'm going to add a stop right here, and we'll have a through movement all the way through. So we used to have a bike path going all the way up this road. We're going to instead do an off-street facility, which to me feels a ton more suburban. And we'll go with a multi-use path. And this is going to get kind of tricky. So I basically want to run this on the side of the highway right here. And that means that I need to carve out a space right here. And now we need to link up to the rest of the bike network. We've got a couple of options. So we could run this straight through to this retaining wall right here, this retaining wall path, and then convert this, or we could attempt to kind of turn down here. I think I might try to do a little of both. So I'm going to grab the cycle path and I want to angle this underneath and separate this from our pedestrian facility. And then for the pedestrian facility, we'll go straight through. We'll just remove the double crosswalk and convert this tiny segment to be a highway. And now lastly, let's clean things up. And now I'm going to run this up and down the entire road. Now, next, I want to clean up the area directly adjacent to this road. You can see we've got a whole bunch of surfaces. And then there are a whole bunch of other surfaces around here, and I'm really not sure what I want to do with these. I've been going back and forth. What I think I'm going to do is, for the first time in a while, use Map Texture Replacer. Now, I downloaded this Brixton Bay theme, which I think looks really, really good. And you can see it just makes the grass look a ton more vibrant, and we get much more contrast with our hillsides. So I really like the way that this looks. It makes the mountains look better back here. But I think I want to make one small adjustment. So for the grass normal, I'm going to say default, and it'll make the grass look just a little bit darker, and I personally like that more. And with this, I kind of like the way that the ground looks a bit more, and I don't want to use surfaces as much. In fact, the surfaces don't look as good as this theme, at least in my opinion. So in some of these cases, I'm just going to delete them. Now we've got to remove some of the things that are on the road itself. We've got bike racks and bus stops on a highway, and that's not going to work. We've also got a key wall right here and a flat road where we're supposed to have a dry creek bed. So we'll elevate these. And control the heights to make these flat. And that's looking good. Now let's adjust the roads that are intersecting with this road. So these should all be arterials or collectors. In this particular instance, we go from having a whole bunch of right-of-way to having basically none, and I want to rectify that. So I'm going to clear these uses right here, and we'll find something more appropriate in the near future. And then I purposely overbuilt capacity right here. Again, makes it feel more suburban, at least in my opinion. Now, right here, we have a local road teeing into this arterial. That wouldn't happen, so I'll just get rid of it. And then I want to send this road all the way through here. And we're going to be rethinking commercial in this area, so I don't mind eliminating some of those uses. Now we have a couple more arterials coming in here, one right here. This one actually is more of a collector, but I'm okay leaving this one with a 2-lane road. And then for this one, we'll go with 4 lanes right here. And we're doing that in anticipation of this road being upgraded in the future. And now you might have noticed we've been on pause the entire time, and that's because we don't have utility connections yet. So let's add power, water, and sanitary sewer. For power, I'm just going to light the road. For water and sanitary sewer, we'll place this underneath the road, right where it belongs. And now we should be able to resume this. And thankfully, nothing is breaking down, which means that we should be in the clear. And like that, our transportation network's in place. So let's move on to building our shopping center. I am really excited to put together this shopping center. And that's because for the first time, I feel like I finally have the assets to put together a proper shopping center. That's because I went to Paradox Mods and picked up a number of assets, including King Leno's Walmart, Crystal Listo's McDonald's, King Leno's Wendy's, Bruni's Supermarket, this absolutely awesome bank, and from the Supply Chains Content Creator Pack, we have Bad Ideas Sporting Goods Store. So we're going to be working all of these assets into our shopping center, but that's going to require a lot of space. And I think ideally we would place this right here because shopping centers really require 2 things: good visibility and good access. but this is Daryl's home and he's never going to sell. So as a result, we're going to have to call a bit of a mulligan on this neighborhood right here. So bon voyage, folks, and thank you for your property. Time for a bit of eminent domain. And now that we've cleared the site, let's do a little bit of grading. It's going to make creating the parking lot much easier. So I'll start here at the top height and slope from the bottom. Now the first thing I want to do is place a frontage road. And I'm going to keep this fairly close to the bike trail, set back about 1 unit. But I don't want to join up with this arterial right here. So we'll head up a couple of units and then complex curve into it. And this will end up being the perfect parcel for a fast food restaurant. Now I'm going to begin by placing our largest asset, our Walmart. They might notice I have 2 versions of this asset. This first version is King Leno's asset. This is the one that I downloaded from Paradox Mods. If you place this, it's a beautiful asset, but it has one flaw: 3,000 employees. I took this into the editor and adjusted one field, the space multiplier. After doing that, it went from 3,000 employees to 261. And that's why I had this local version right here. I've let King Leno know about this fix, and it sounds like he might implement it in the future. Editor Phil here. I've been working on this episode for the better part of the last week during the holidays, and during that time, King Leno's actually implemented the change that I recommended. And as a result, the official Walmart asset on Paradox Mods has 262 employees. Now, in my build, I have replaced my janky asset with King Leno's official asset. And the good news there is that my asset wasn't storing any resources and King Leno's does. And with that revision, I highly recommend this asset. Anyway, let's get back to it. And this thing is absolutely massive. I can see we're going to need more space already. And that's because generally a parking field for this building is probably going to be about the same size as the building itself. I'm going to temporarily place this, and then I'll use Move It to set this back a little ways. And that's probably about where it should be. So let's remove even more properties. Because of where this is, I want to slide the asset over just a little bit. And that's because I want to use the alleyway as the main bounding road for the parking lot. And honestly, it's looking like the parking lot's going to be a little bit smaller than I want it to be. Let's fix this. And that is looking much better in my opinion. Now, we're going to figure out the internals of the parking lot in just a moment, but I want to figure out circulation around the site first. And because of that, I'm just going to wrap this road around here. Now, I've got to be honest with you. I was second guessing myself a little bit here and trying to preserve what I had already built. But here's the thing. We're going to need lots of space for our sporting goods store and for our grocery store. So I think it makes the most sense to try to clean things up here from a grid standpoint. We're likely going to encroach upon this as well. So with that in mind, that's why I have such extreme interventions. But I think that this looks really good. So now let's work on the parking lot right here. And a couple of things I'm thinking about. First of all, I want to have some secondary access to the Walmart store. So right in the center here, I'm going to add another alleyway. And that leaves us with 3 ways to enter the store parking lot. And then I think I want to outline the rest of the parking lot as well. And this has me realizing I probably need to bump the building over just a little bit. And that's because I want this lane to line up nicely with the lane that wraps around the building. I also kind of want to have 1 unit of separation in between this road and the Walmart so that we don't have all sorts of vehicles spilling out onto this road. So I'll replace that with an alley and then replace the alley with a normal road. And I think I'll use the exact same trick over here. And now that's looking good. So I want to line up this parking lot road with this drive aisle right here. We'll link that in, and then I'm going to recenter this one. Now I'm going to use invisible parking lot roads through here so we don't get a whole bunch of roadway naming spam. And I will attempt to use the grid to keep this nice and straight. And then I can already see that these are not exactly where I want them to be. So I'm going to use the replace tool, turn off snapping, and then bump these over. And I know it's tough to see, but a bit of eyeballing got this to be exactly where I want it to be. I'll do the exact same thing for the other half of the lot. And that is honestly looking really, really good. Now, the other benefit to doing this is we don't get a bunch of lighting spam, so we can place our own if we want to. But it does mean that I have to add my own pavements through here. And I think I'll attempt to use Algendo's roadway surfaces through here. And I'm going to try to use the area bucket. And you can see it's filling this in really nicely, just so long as I'm a little bit patient and keep a close eye on where it's attempting to snap to. And I got to admit, I'm freestyling a bit, and I really think that this turned out really well. I'm really excited about this. So now we have to figure out the lighting here. So let's switch our time to night. And I want to make sure that whatever lighting I place completely covers the parking lot. That would be a requirement for a commercial building like this. I'm going to go with these light posts that shine in all directions. I just want to make sure that there are no dark gaps in between the vehicles. I think that this is going to be perfect. And I'll run this up and down all of the aisles. Now we've also got this middle row, so I'll cover this as well. And we'll do the exact same thing on the outer row. And then I want to switch over to this commercial light pole 1 for just a couple of rows, because right here, for instance, we don't have enough light. And the same thing on this outer road right here. We need to add lights here as well. And then lastly, we're going to want a light in front of the store. And that's looking basically perfect in my opinion. But we've got two more things, landscaping and signage. Now in the rear, we're going to want to screen the neighborhood from the Walmart. So there's generally a requirement for evergreens or something that's never going to lose its leaves. You want to screen year round after all. We'll also add in some lindens for some variation and a couple of oaks to make landscaping points. And then to round things out, I'm going to add some bushes in between the trees. And then lastly, we're going to require some fencing as well. And that screening looks pretty good and pretty reasonable in my opinion. Now there is one trick that I used that I wanted to point out. I used recolor. I copied the color of a home and pasted it onto this fence. If you're not using Asset Variation Changer, that is a way that you can recolor those net lanes. Let's also add some landscaping to the front of the parking lot. And I think this is just about as much landscaping as I could require. Perfect. And the last thing we have to do is add the Walmart signage. Now, if you're using King Leno's asset, this is actually a sub-building and you can place it within a radius, which is really, really cool. My version of this, the local version that I have, doesn't work in that way. So I'm going to place this manually. Generally, with these sorts of signs, there would be a balloon study and the developer would actually want to see where they could see the sign from. Oh my goodness, death wave. And the height of the sign would be dictated by that. I don't know that I can actually change the height, so I'm just going to place these in locations where you get great visibility from the highway. And basically, I noticed that the sign doesn't have signage on both sides, so I just want to make sure that I have two here so that I can cover both sides. And then for this one, I actually don't care if I'm covering both sides. I just want excellent highway visibility. So I'm going to place that right here. And with that, we have one store down, and I think it looks really, really good. Next, let's add our fast food restaurants. Now I'm going to place those right about here. And I've actually got two of these assets. I've got Grooney's European McDonald's and I've got Cristalisto's American McDonald's. So I'm going to go with this one, but honestly, they're both beautiful assets. And I got really lucky. This fits basically perfectly right here. I'm going to place the Go Local Bank right next to that. And this is from Jack Mart. Absolutely beautiful asset as well. And I'm guessing that the Wendy's won't fit. So I'll place that over here for the time being. Interestingly, this is King Leno's Wendy's and it's actually a growable. So we're going to see these throughout the city from here on out. And for the McDonald's, I believe I have some signage, so I'm going to add that. And I placed one of these at the front of the store and one of them at the back of the store so you could see it from all directions. And with that, I think that we can move on to our next big box store. And we're clearly going to need more space. So I'm going to take this post office and relocate this down here, along with this police station. But before we do that, I'm going to modify this road. And we have a whole bunch of city serving uses right here, and I don't think that this makes the most sense as I look at this. So I think I'm going to take these and temporarily put them over here. And then we're going to modify this road to look exactly the same as the Walmart side. And now it makes much more sense in my opinion. So let's search for that supermarket. And this is actually going to fit really nicely right over here. Or perhaps the right way of saying this is it could fit really nicely right over here if we do a little bit of finagling. So I'm going to place that right here. We've got our community pool. Again, I'm going to relocate this temporarily. And then we're going to modify the roadway network over here. And that looks really good. But you might notice I bumped this back just a little ways. The main reason for that is I really want this to feel like you could drive straight through one parking lot into the next. And to make this work, we're going to need to modify this road just slightly. And that's looking pretty good, but I feel like I've been getting away with some stuff. Let's see if I can keep going. I want to see if I can make this road attach. And for that, we're going to use some invisible car paths. And I just want to make sure that I have the correct one. Looks like it's a one-way, car-only path. And I can't believe it. That worked. That's amazing. And my goodness, that looks so good. I just replaced these surfaces with some of the Algendo surfaces. And then I remembered we have the decals that can cover up the sidewalks. It just really pulls everything together. It just looks so good. And that's a good reminder to me. I want to give a huge shout out to Triton for getting the extra landscaping mod working again. It's one of those mods that I don't realize how much I care about until it's missing. It's absolutely essential. Now, before we move on from the grocery store, this asset has one more party trick. You can upgrade it to have the brand of your choosing. And though these are all European brands, Aldi's here in the US. And because of that, I'm going to place it on here and it adds the Aldi branding all over the place. So cool. So cool. And one more thing, I am realizing that we didn't screen back here. Let's do that. And this time, because the loading bays are further back, the treatment wasn't quite as extreme. We got some oaks right here and some bushes along the parking lot. We'll call that good enough. And then lastly, I want to add the sporting goods store. And that's going to go right about here. So that means that we'll need to get rid of Edgewater Street right here. And that's a signature building, so I'll grab that and place it right here. And this has me thinking, maybe I don't want to actually send this frontage road back like this. And after a bit of back and forth, I think that this is a reasonable solution. Basically, giving some space for a turnaround right here. I severed this unnecessary bridge, and I've definitely made this feel more suburban with the cul-de-sac. Now, a bit of cleanup right here. And then I want to once again replace the surfaces. And we'll place the decals at the entry points. And there we go. That is looking pretty darn good. Now we've got a couple more small modifications of the roadway network around here, like Sterling Street is kind of abruptly ending and looks a little bit strange. I'm not going to provide connectivity through here. I'm going to move the cul-de-sac. And we'll also adjust the roads here to add bike lanes and a grassy center median so people aren't parking on this road. And honestly, I don't want people parking on any of these roads over here, so I'm going to add trees to all of them. And then lastly in this area, let's move some of these city serving uses back here. But I think I want to go with some very suburban variants of all of these. So we have a fire station, post office, and police station, and I also removed a clinic, so we're going to have to add all those back. And I feel like the southwestern variants look incredibly suburban, so I'm going to add all of those. So there's fire. The police station's too large, so I'm going to go with the vanilla variant. We'll go with a southwestern clinic right about here. I think I'll take this police station and actually relocate this over here. And then we need a post office. I think I'm going to go for a small post office and try to recolor it. I am going to place that over here. I ended up removing all the city serving uses except for the post office from over here, and it's just because they didn't fit correctly or they didn't feel correct in my opinion. What I'm going to do instead is add a local road back here and then relocate all these uses to be off from this road. There is one final adjustment I want to make, and that's over here. We've got all of this empty space, and I want to have a whole bunch of commercial uses that seem like they're auto-oriented. Now, to do that, I'm going to use Platter for the first time today. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Platter, it's a brilliant mod that allows you to plop zoning. And one of the things that I love about this is you can micro-target what you want to place. So I'm going to say Southwestern Commercial. And now as I adjust the size of the zone, it's going to tell me how many buildings will fit in this space. So for instance, with this 2x4, I have one building available. So if I want lots of variation, this is probably not the size for me. I can also see that there are no 3x5s, but there are two 3x6s. This is probably what I want to go for if I want an auto-oriented use. You might wonder why I'd go with Platter instead of just finding the specific building. And the main reason is the building will level and I can rezone it in the future if I want to. So this is just incredibly flexible. It's one of the reasons I love Platter so much. And these are the exact sort of auto-oriented uses I'd expect to see right here. It's not beautiful, but it is realistic. And then I mentioned recoloring this post office. Let's try to do that. I basically just want to turn this into a white post office. It just, to me, is a much more modern looking building when you do that. Oh, and there's one more thing that I've got to do. The Southwestern Actlets have these floating signs. There we go, resolved. And there's one more final thing that I have to do with the shopping center, and that's fix the access into it. And basically, I want to create a super node here. This is fairly simple. I just want a large roundabout. I'll place it right here with Anarchy. Back out these legs going into this. Then I'll just redraw them in. Then when I remove the roundabout, we have a super node. And then finally, I want to make this intersection larger so the movements are more sweeping. So I'll just adjust the nodes like this. And there we go. That looks much more realistic in my opinion. And with our shopping center in place, let's move on to our density fixes. One of the things that I've never loved about Cities Skylines 1 or 2 is the leveling system. Buildings are always progressing towards level 5, and level 5 is when the building is the biggest. And eventually, every building will reach level 5 in Cities Skylines 2, and you'll end up with the tallest variants of all the buildings. And that's why this area looks so crazy. I never wanted to have these large buildings here. This is suburban. I thought that maybe 5 stories max for maybe one building would be appropriate, but really 2 to 3 for the rest. So we're gonna go back to the drawing board on literally all of these buildings. And I've got to be honest, that feels so good. Really, really dislike this area. So I've got some fixes that I think are going to make this feel much more authentic. First, let's take Amity Street right here and tie it into Linden. And I forgot all about this suburban road that we have. I'm going to use that. And then through here, I'm going to use a whole bunch of new apartment assets that I picked up. First are these Imperial Heights Reborn assets. And this is basically the Imperial Heights apartments that comes with the Southwest asset pack, but with the population numbers toned way, way down. Now, I want to modify these assets further because there's a lot of landscaping on these, and as soon as I resume it, we'll get solar panels on some of these. I don't necessarily want that. I'm also going to remove some of the propping. There's a whole bunch of greenhouses and plantings. I just don't think that it really fits. And then I want it to feel like this is an apartment complex, so I'm going to attach these surfaces. And then I think I'm just going to place one of these wide parking lots and make a couple of modifications to make it fit this area. Basically just hiding this exit over here. Looks a ton better in my opinion. Then I'll provide some pedestrian access. And I was going to add a whole bunch of invisible paths, but it looks like it's already working, so this is great. Now, before we move on from this area, I noticed that we've got some bus routes in the middle of this building, so I'm going to restore these. And that'll get those routes operational once again. And that's a good reminder. We had some signs over here, means that we have no stops over here. And we've got some waypoints making the routing do some crazy things. So I've removed all those, and now everything looks much more logical, but we have no bus stops serving the shopping center. So I'll add one on either side of the road. And it's not ideal, but at least there's some access to the shopping center at this point. This is a highly suburban solution. And then lastly, let's provide a bit of access to this neighborhood. Stops right there. We'll do the trick. Now let's get back to our apartments, and I want to add some more. This time around, I'll place some right here. Grooney put together these amazing cedar residence apartments. There are 3 different variations, and you can place multiple of them if you have Anarchy on. So I'm going to place some right here and right here, but I need one more. So I'll go with this one. Then I think I want to center these a little bit more within this parcel. So we'll do something like that. And then I'll remove the fences and the surfaces to try to make it feel like this is a larger parcel. We might even be able to add something like this passage park right here to fill the parcel in a bit better. That looks really good in my opinion. I'm going to add a couple more of these. And then lastly, I'm going to place some of these apartments, the Sapphire. And honestly, I think I want to go fairly dense with these, and I have an idea. I'm going to grab this perpendicular parking alley and run them straight back like this. And that looks so good in my opinion, but there's a couple more adjustments that we have to make. I really don't like how we have these nubs down here, and they're easy enough to fix. All we have to do is use Algendo's surfaces and make something like that. I think I'm also going to remove all of these sidewalks. It seems like there's just too much. And let's keep it real. This development is boring, but it's also very realistic. I've definitely reviewed plans for many apartment complexes that look almost identical to this one. Now, let's finish this out with a little bit more parking. All of these units right here have 0 parking. That's a problem. And my guess is any developer would probably want to see more than this, but that's what they're going to get. And then finally, I want to improve our grading a bit. You can see that there's some jank here, and that's the great thing about using the texture replacer is I can actually see where I need to smooth things a bit. And that looks a ton better in my opinion. Now along here, we're going to add some single family homes as the transition into this neighborhood, and we'll use platter for that. So I'm going to go with the North American low density waterfront housing, select the platter button, and then make sure that I'm snapping to the sides of a road. And then I want to get the maximum depth that I can. My goodness, platter is such a special mod. Being able to plop the zoning like this is just such a game changer. I love this mod so much. And then while that's all spawning in, I want to take a look at this side of Riverbend Boulevard as well, because we've got some adjustments to make here. Basically, all the schools that we have are very big and feel very urban, and I just don't want that here. Again, a product of its time. So we'll get rid of everything and try again. We're gonna make the Southwestern High School work over here. We'll take this arterial right here, or rather collector, extend that down to here, and then we'll switch back over to that rural road. Now I will add another local road right here. And now we're going to take some liberties with the asset. Basically, I want to curve into the asset so we don't go off the cliff. And we'll go with something like that. So that'll mean that I need to get rid of the fencing around here. I'll also get rid of the surfaces. And I want to modify this path right here to make it seem like it's actually linking up with the pedestrian facility. And then we'll do a bit of cleanup. Now I want to control parking a bit, so no parking along this road, and none right here directly in front of the high school, though I will still allow it on the other side of the road. Next, I want to make this pedestrian connection right here, seems like it's missing, and add a student parking facility. This is the suburbs after all. And I think the last thing I want to do at the high school is make sure that all of these paths actually link up to things. So we'll grab some invisible pedestrian paths and just make targeted connections. This one's good. This one's good. This one right here is almost good, as is this one. That right there completely fixes it. We've also got some paths that don't necessarily make sense, so I'll remove those. Very good. Now, I do want to add a bit more residential zoning through here. So we'll use platter once again. This time, I'm going to go with some of the southwestern zoning. And I decided to extend Primrose Street just a bit further, so it feels like this is a part of the new neighborhood, and that's why there's a bit of density right here. I added some homes over here, and I added a couple down here. And then I figure we're going to keep this area right here for future expansion of the high school if necessary. We actually have some sub-buildings that would fit right here if needed. Now, the last thing we have to do is find a home for our elementary school, and I've been giving this some thought. I think we actually are going to call a mulligan on what we just did. We're going to eliminate this road right here and all of these uses. Then we'll extend this road in here and plop our Southwestern Elementary School. Now, it's an elementary school, and this is Cities Skylines too, so you better believe that we're going to add all the upgrades we can. With the exception of the annex, I don't think that we need that. And then I want to do a little bit of work to make this feel a bit more natural. We'll also modify this road so that this all fits a bit nicer. We'll add a cul-de-sac at the end so we have a natural termination. And then we'll get rid of all of the extra landscaping. And then one thing that jumps out to me is we have no playground at this school. There's a little tiny one, I guess, in the back, but not all that much. So I'm going to add one of these on. I'll situate this right here. And then so that it works, I'll add this secondary access to the parking lot. Then I'll replace this pavement specifically so that I can stretch this over the top. And we could add some more residential around here. And we'll once again use platter for that. Then finally, there's one more area that we adjusted that needs more residential, and that's right here. This time I'll go with the waterfront housing so we have more flexibility. And lastly, I'm realizing we never filled in the area behind the shopping center, so let's do that as well. And I want to mirror the old zoning, so go with the UK semi-detached. And then for the rest of the area, go to some lower density waterfront housing. And with that, all of our density fixes are in place. So let's move on to a bit of landscaping and detailing. Unlike most other builds, I've actually done a lot of the detailing while I was building. So we're not going to be going deep into landscaping. We're going to be focusing on the details, making sure that we don't have any jank and that things are as nice as possible. I'll also fix things on the periphery of the area that we built today to make sure that this entire build is as nice as possible. After about 20 minutes of landscaping and detailing, our area is now complete and I absolutely love it. And that means there's only one more thing left to do. Let's take inventory of what we've done with that brief city tour. This is one of those really interesting builds where I know that some people are going to absolutely love what we've done today, and others of you are going to be much more skeptical. And I hear you. Coming into the build and wholesale demolishing entire neighborhoods and replacing them with new assets, that's not the height of realism. But here's the thing. The assets that we had available to us when we built some of these neighborhoods weren't the most realistic for the areas that we were trying to build. Reasonably, we didn't have the assets to put together a proper big box shopping center. And I think it goes without saying, we couldn't have created this multi-use path because we didn't have bikes. And I feel like this view of the apartment complexes really demonstrates why this was such an important change. And it's because these 5/1s or less are just much more appropriate in a suburban context. And I've got to tell you, after working as a planner in a suburban community for a few years, you would be hard pressed to get anything taller than this in a community like this. And ultimately, even though I knew going into this was going to be a very controversial build and that some of you were really not going to like it, the reason why I decided to do it is because I really had fun doing it. And it gave me a lot of inspiration. It made me want to play in Magnolia County even more than I already want to. And sometimes you just have to follow the fun and do the things that really get you excited to play the game. And for me, recreating a place that feels very authentic and very realistic, that does it for me. And ultimately, because of how much fun I had with this build, I'm probably going to do this in other parts of the city. I think that this area just north of this neighborhood is primed to be given the old fix-up treatment. I've never really liked the assets in this area, and that lake has always bothered me. So I think that fixing this area up would make a lot of sense. We've got new school assets, so I don't necessarily have to do the terrible things that I've done to these schools. We can make this whole thing functional and just look a ton better. Another neighborhood I want to give some more thought to is this neighborhood over here. This is one of the oldest neighborhoods in the city, but it's always felt really disconnected from downtown. And I feel like there are ways that we can link these up, make it feel like it's a much more cohesive, flowing neighborhood. And like this has a much more historic grid pattern that ties into the downtown a bit more. That's something that I really kind of didn't do a great job of when I built this neighborhood. I also want to revisit the university, take down the density of some of the dorms because they are crazy tall, and add in some of our new assets that are just going to fit the university a ton better. We've also got to rethink Hidden Brook, and this is for a couple of reasons. Number one, this train station's causing all sorts of problems here. You can see that we've got some noise pollution because this asset now kicks off a whole bunch of noise, and it didn't in the past. But we've also got other assets that I think might fit this area a bit better, some of Tygon's rail assets that weren't available when we built this neighborhood that I think would really elevate the aesthetic and vibe of this neighborhood rather than having this gigantic facility, having something that's a little bit smaller and more fitting in a small town. I think it'd also be nice to reduce the density of some of these buildings as well. It's just way too much for the community of this size. But the big one, and likely the next one, is Charity Bay. We've got to completely rethink this place. I want to bring in some of the new bridges. We need a new port. And I want to completely rethink the assets in this area because these are all vanilla assets from basically day one Cities Skylines 2. And honestly, it's just not great. So we can do a ton better. We can bring some boat assets in here. We can make the harbors feel much more realistic. We can add some reasonable and realistic breakwaters and maybe some keys that aren't insane. So there's a lot of really great stuff that we can do here. And again, I feel really good taking on those projects after doing this one because I have some inspiration, a bit more confidence, and a ton of ideas. But still, let me know in the comments how you feel about this. Are you okay with me calling these gigantic mulligans? And if you are, what areas would you like me to tackle first? After all, if I'm anything, it's highly persuadable. But after saying all of that, I think that we're going to leave it here. And I really hope that you've enjoyed this one. If you did, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. And I want to thank you so much for your time today. There's a million things that you could have been doing. You decided to hang out with me and build a Walmart and a McDonald's. And for that, I appreciate you and I appreciate your time. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one next year. Take care. Bye-bye.